everybody. Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux. Nice card at Horseshoe Indianapolis on Saturday. Let's kick off the 50-cent pick five with race number 4. It's at a mile on the turf, and it's the Horseshoe Indianapolis handicap. Let's take a peek at this field. We've got 3-year-old fillies. It's a big field. The 13 Always Wanting isn't also eligible. And I think you could make a case for 5 or 6 of these horses, including your morning line favorite, the number 11, Everland, who's dropping out of a couple of graded stakes races.
You mentioned Everland at 3-1, only has a pair of turf tries. Then you look outside of this one, 9-2, 5-1, 2 horses at 6-1. I do think it's a really good betting race, especially from the exotics perspective. Even if you like Everland on top, I think there's ways to work in value underneath.
And there should be some speed in this race. It's a big field, and we've got several horses stretching out at a sprint. So we'll throw up our Timeform US pace projector. This is how Timeform US sees it after a half mile. Dozen Diamonds, the number 7, was up close to in the Appalachian, a very fast-paced race last time out. If she shows that kind of speed, she's going to be up and on the lead. Honey Dijon, I think, will be close. Stylish Sue has shown a lot of speed, although she hasn't really been close to faster fractions.
Yeah, I do think Honey Dijon, though, should be somewhat forward, especially if you even look at last time. I know she faded in that race first off the bench, but at least they went very quick there at Churchill Downs. I know it was on the dirt, but the other one I think that maybe can kind of press the pace, especially if it's fast, is the 9 Charlene's Dream. You can see here in about the 5 spot early on in the race. She's shown some speed last time out. I don't think she was necessarily fast enough, but look at some of her races at Golden Gate, especially 2 back. She can be right there in the mix.
And your morning line favorite, Everland, note the LP flag over her chiclet. That indicates she has the fastest Timeform US late pace rating. Another horse that should rally from off the pace is the 1 Storm Miami. We're going to take a look at her most recent start. First level allowance during the Belmont Racing Festival meet at Saratoga. Was able to save some ground into the stretch. She's going to shoot on through along the inside, but she's not going to be able to outfinish Buttercream Babe, who's also in this spot. Good effort for Storm Miami. Obviously has to do a little better.
She's going to need to do better, but I think in terms of what she faced second time stateside, she had to face tougher competition and she took the right step forward. I think the big thing today in this race specifically will be the blinkers coming off. I wonder in terms of her running style, what that's going to do with the inside draw. She's typically not very far off of it, but she does let horses get a couple of lengths in front of her and tries to make the late run. And as you mentioned, Buttercream Babe end up just being the best horse in that most recent outing. But I still think she has some upside and maybe a horse to use at least underneath.
And she's going out for Brendan Walsh, who's having a phenomenal meet thus far at Horseshoe Indianapolis. Do It Divvy has done nothing wrong from 2 lifetime starts. Let's watch her most recent effort. First level allowance at Delaware, going a 2-turn mile and 70 yards, fresh off the sprint win over a synthetic surface. Like the tactical speed she showed, tucking in behind the leader, gets to the outside, and kind of explodes late to beat a couple of next out winners.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of them being the runner up in this spot, a next out winner. I thought it was a good performance, and to see her now go 2 for 2 and how she handled the stretch out and the surface change, I think bodes well for her. And the one thing is, trainers like Jonathan Thomas, they're not afraid then to take those wins and then go straight into a stakes race. And I do think in terms of where this falls, this is probably a good race for her to test her waters. Obviously, it's a big field, so it doesn't make it easier in that regard. But in terms of the level of competition, I think she is sort of a horse that matches this group.
Honey Dijon, the number 3, is a big price on the morning line, but she's not without merit. She's a stakes winner on dirt going 2 turns, and I think it's too early to say she's not a turf horse based on her one and only grass appearance. That was at Kentucky Downs, a course which has those undulating European-like bumps and turns and all sorts of hills and dips. Maybe Honey Dijon didn't care for it. Her last race was sprinting on the dirt in a tough second-level allowance race. I think getting back out to 2 turns will help. And if she can run some of her dirt races on turf, she can get a piece of this.
And you're looking at her, some of her best dirt races were down at Gulfstream Park and part of that Florida Sire Stakes series. And, she did well, obviously, in the December race, and she was much the best in that spot. I wonder, though, if her figures compared to some others are a little bit on the softer side. And the big thing for her is she's going to have to stretch out again. I mean, obviously, she does have a win on the dirt at 1 mile and a 16th, but the turf, we've only seen her, as you mentioned, 6.5 on a oddity of a turf course. So to me, it's a little tough, but the barn does spot horses well when switching surfaces.
Some angles for the 4, Zoe, as she adds blinkers and stretches out in distance, but I am a little bit concerned about the added distance for Zoe. Some of her best races thus far have come sprinting. They were early in her career, going 5.5 furlongs. She has seemed to have improved, at least from a speed figure standpoint this year, but I wonder if she'll eventually be at her best around 1 turn.
And obviously her performance in the Honey Rider, it was respectable. It was a big field and she ended up getting third there. She was still sort of a distant third when it was all said and done. And then they went back to another route race and then they cut her back over the EP Taylor. I guess my question is, now the blinkers are going on and she has to stretch out. And in this race, to me, the pace is going to be hot. So if they're being added for focus, that's the big question. But I do have reservations about her with this distance.
We saw Buttercream Bay scored at Saratoga last time out, and she parlayed a really good pace-tracking, ground-saving trip under Luis Saez to win that race. She eased out at just the right point and sprinted on home. She got a very respectable 88 Buyers speed figure. She just seems to fit these race conditions like a glove. 9-2 is a fair price. I wonder if she takes a little more money.
I think she will take more money. We showed that replay of that most recent win at Saratoga where one of her rivals was third, and she got the great trip that she needed. And you kind of look at her races last year. They clearly liked her, the untappable. Then they put her in a graded event. Then she races in the grade one Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies Turf. And then they tried her in two more spots. They put her on the sidelines. They brought her back in a dirt race, which was interesting to also see her cut back to 6.5, a little bit more time off, and then she wins. So she's coming in here off a career best. I thought visually she looked very good winning that race. And I'm thinking 9-2 might be more like 5-2 or 7-2.
Won't be surprised at all considering how impressive she was last time out and the quality of competition she kept earlier in her career. The 6 is Pursuit of Liberty. She's only raced once on the turf. That was back on New Year's Eve at the fairground. She ran really well that day. She took all the money and then she came with a strong kick to win. We've only seen her once since then. That's kind of been the story of her career. She races, then there's a layoff, then there's another layoff. But she might get the right setup in here, and I think she's still unexposed. She can improve at a big price for a strong trainer.
Yeah, you mentioned Brad Cox. He's having a decent meet, maybe not comparable to his other numbers in terms of 2024 as a whole. Her turf win was quite nice, and then obviously they wanted to get her back on the grass for her first start of her 3-year-old season, and that didn't happen. So it came up to be a short field. She was second best on the dirt. It's going to be interesting to see the tactics from her because in her only turf race, we saw her rally from, the kind of that back flight of horses and make the late run. With the compact field last time out, it's really tough to kind of gauge her running style, and I wonder if it's a factor that she's versatile or she's going to be a closer in here. And if she's going to sit from off of it and the pace is right, she could certainly take a step forward and get a piece.
3-month layoff for the 7 Dozen Diamonds, who set the pace in the Appalachian last time out. And she had to go a sub-23 opening quarter while pushing that early pace. And that pace was fast. The Appalachian went to deep closers. The early horses ended up way at the back of the pack, including Dozen Diamonds. It was a productive race. The 5th place finisher came back to win the Penn Oaks with an 85 Buyer. Maybe she's the speed of the speed this time around and can last a heck of a lot longer.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously at Keeneland, they went very, very quick, as you mentioned in that most recent outing. But prior to that, when she's been on the lead, when you look at her win against on Winners of Two Life, it was leisurely on the front end. So I wonder what her stamina situation is going to be in a race like this, where the pace is projected to at least be honest or on the fast side. If that's the case, I don't know if I see her sticking around late. We saw that even in the dirt race where the fractions were a little bit on the quicker side, at least to the half. It wasn't necessarily fast, especially at Churchill Downs, but she just didn't have that late punch. And I think that works against her in a race with this sort of race flow.
I was really impressed with the 8 Kodiak Wintergreen from her performances at Saratoga last year, including her maiden win going 5.5 furlongs, where she was in between horses most of the way and just gutted it out in the manner of a professional racehorse. Last time out at Churchill, they tried to stretch her out to a mile, and she just lost all chance at the start. She doesn't have a lot of early speed, but she doesn't have to be coming from a mile back, and that's where she ended up after an awkward beginning.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at horses above 10-1, she's a major player in here, and it's going to come down to, for her as well, the pace. But I think looking at that second try at a mile, or I should say more of a realistic mile compared to Kentucky Downs in that configuration, she raced very well. I wonder if further down the road, she may want to go further than a mile, maybe a mile and an eighth or so. But I think this race might set up for her really nicely, and I'm intrigued by her at this price just with the flow.
The 9 Charlene's Dream is another long shot on the morning line that has some credentials and angles. She's getting Lasix for the first time. All of her synthetic and turf races in Northern California were good, including her one and only start on the turf at a mile distance where she won the Pike Place Dancer. I think they probably just sent her out there on dirt last time out, A, to see what they had on that surface, B, to get her fit for this race. She faced a very good field.
You mentioned that most recent race, her first kind of East Coast adventure at Churchill Downs. They kept her in Kentucky at Turfway Park training and probably looking for the right spot for her, whether that would be something else at Churchill or Ellis Park, or now you talk about maybe going to Horseshoe Indy. And they found this spot for her, and it's going to be interesting. She has been able to win, as you mentioned, on the turf at Golden Gate going a mile. These waters are deeper, but she has some early foot, and she does not need the lead to win. She has that ability to sit a couple of lengths off the pace with a target in front of her. So we'll see what she can do. The dirt was just a failed experiment.
Stylish Sue is the number 10, and she couldn't get out of her own way in her first two starts on dirt. She switched to turf. The light bulb went on. Not only is she 3 for 3 on turf, she hasn't been headed at any point of those three races. Is she a need the lead type? Perhaps. If she wants the lead in here, she's going to have to go a lot faster than last time, where she got away with a nice, easy 49-second half.
Mentioned 2 times ago, 51 and 2. I mean, they're just really slow fractions when you think about it, but you can't take anything away from her. She's taken a step forward with each of her races in terms of figures. The way she's done it, she's always kind of holding that margin that she has in deep stretch, which I think is pretty impressive with the races that she's had to rally off now consecutively. And we talk about the race two back. It is worth noting she did get DQ'd from it, but regardless, she was on the front end that spot. So we'll see. I mean, another one that comes in here off of good recent form, but I don't know if things are going to pan out the way that they have in her last few.
The 11, Everland, our morning line favorite. Well, her best race came on synthetic when she won the Bourbon at Oaks, which got her into the Kentucky Oaks, her one and only start on dirt. And all things considered, the quality of competition she was facing, wet track, dirt for the first time. She actually ran quite well to be fifth. They tried her again on turf last time out in the regret. I like that she was able to kind of adapt to the pace. It wasn't fast. She was closer, and she ended up finishing in a one-paced fashion. I think she's going to be a turf and synthetic horse. I'm just not sure I want to take too short of a price.
I completely agree with you. I mean, obviously, you go back to her Bourbon at Oaks. She won very impressively. The race flow, though, did set up for horses off the pace, and that's the trip that she had gotten. And we've seen that time and time again for her. I will say, I did like you said last time at the regret, her adaptability or just the ability to be a bit closer early on. With that, she was kind of even in the stretch, in my opinion. You would have liked to seen a little bit more, but a great spot for her to get back on the turf in consecutive starts. But I think with such a big field and other horses that also have upside, you cannot take that short of a price on her because you go down the page, all of her wins have been at Turfway Park, and her last two, she's still been beaten in both of them.
I've been trying to make the 12 Neon Beach a stakes horse for a while now, and she just hasn't broken through to that level just yet. Just missing at Oaklawn Park, two starts back on the dirt. And then she made her return to turf last time out in the Pen Oaks. We're going to watch that race. She was wide most of the way. She comes with a belated run to finish fourth. I thought this was an okay field she was up against. Neon Beach to me is the kind of filly that needs a trip. And breaking from post 12, it's really going to be difficult for her to get one, but I still think there's something here. She did run on the final 16th of a mile.
And at post 12, you might get better value on her just for that reason, right? That she's going to need to work a little bit harder. I'm with you. Valley of the Vapors is a little bit of a tough subject for me. I really needed her to win there. I thought she did everything right. But I think going back to her turf effort at Penn, at least we saw something different from her. I mean, she was much further back than usual. And you mentioned did make some sort of an impact in the late stages of the race to get up for fourth. And you wonder now, Christian Torres getting back aboard her in consecutive starts, if he's able to work that trip out with her. He's been aboard her a couple of times and familiar with her, but is going to need to do so from this post. But she has upside.
Always wanting the 13 is are also eligible. If she gets into the race, she's going to show speed. I'm not sure that's the right running style considering all the other pace to her inside, and she'll have to work hard to get forward from a tough outside post.
Yeah, that post is not ideal, especially for her. Where like when you kind of contrast her with Neon Beach, at least Neon Beach can be comfortable rating. We saw that last time out. So a tough thing if always wanting draws in here, but one to maybe consider if this one draws in the pace perspective.
Top pick time for race number 4 at Horseshoe Indianapolis. First leg, 50-cent pick 5. It's a spread leg for me. My second pick is your top pick, Buttercream Babe, who just looked good at the Spa.
Yeah, I think that race alone, just having that tactical ability to sit the trip and not be too far off of it, I think that works for her. I think also having post 5 compared to some other horses, if they were drawn better, I would maybe use them a little bit higher up. But from what we've seen so far, she's coming in here off a career best. She did make it look quite easy.
I'm going to give Neon Beach another chance, hoping that this pace can be fast, that she can tuck in without losing too much ground on the first turn and come with a run for Steve Asmussen. You need a little bit more than that 5-1. 5-11-1-8 for Ashley, 12-5-1-11 for me. Race 4, Horseshoe Indianapolis. Nice card on Saturday. Good luck.